The scream didn't sound human. It cut through the night like metal tearing bone. By the time I got to the porch, my hands were already shaking. My wife's voice was breaking into sobs, her arms reaching for the baby carrier. And that's when I saw it. A chain. A real metal chain looped through the handle of my newborn's car seat, padlocked to our porch railing like some animal trap. The baby's cries bounced off the vinyl siding. My flashlight caught a glint of steel, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. Someone had done this. To my child. I tore it loose, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs, but the lock wouldn't budge. The tag hanging from it read, HOA violation. No unattended items on property. That's when I saw her. Across the street, arms folded, watching. Her name was Margaret Langley. HOA president, self-proclaimed protector of the neighborhood. She had no idea I was a cop, and no idea what I'd just survived before moving here. People think police officers are built for fear, that we wear armor inside our skin. They don't see what happens when the uniform comes off, when you go home, and the quiet hits harder than any bullet ever could. My name's Daniel Cole. I was a sergeant in the Richmond Police Department for 11 years. Before that, I was just a husband, and 3 months ago, I became a father. My wife, Jessica, gave birth to our son Noah after 2 miscarriages. She almost didn't make it through the second one. I remember sitting in that hospital corridor under the cold hum of fluorescent lights, listening to the sound of another woman's baby crying in the next room and wondering if we'd ever hear our own. So when Noah came, pink, crying, perfect, I swore I'd protect him from everything. From the world, from danger, from the ugliness I saw every night on the job. That promise is why I left the force. 1 month before the chain incident, I handed in my badge. The city had chewed me up enough. I'd lost 2 partners in 3 years. I'd seen a mother crumple over her son's body after a drive-by. I'd seen what grief could do to people, how it hollowed them out, turned them against each other. So, we moved. Packed up our tiny apartment and drove 30 miles south to a quiet, manicured neighborhood called Maple Grove Estates. It was the kind of place realtors described with words like charming and community-oriented. White fences, trimmed lawns, a playground that still smelled like new plastic. We thought we'd found peace. Our house was a small 2-story with blue shutters and a porch swing that squeaked when you rocked too hard. Jessica would sit there with Noah in her arms every morning, humming lullabies while the world still slept. I'd make coffee, 2 scoops, splash of milk, and just watch them. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't scare me. The HOA packet they gave us on move-in day was thick, like a law textbook. Rules about paint colors, mailbox heights, lawn lengths. I laughed when I read it. We'll keep the grass short and stay out of trouble, I told Jess. She smiled, tired but hopeful. I just want a place where we can breathe again. For a while, we did. Neighbors waved when we passed. An older couple brought over a pie. Someone left a welcome note in our mailbox signed HOA board. It all seemed normal. Too normal. Then came her voice. The first time I heard Margaret Langley, it was through a megaphone. She was standing in the cul-de-sac, barking at a teenage boy who'd parked his car facing the wrong direction. Her hair was a stiff silver helmet, her posture military straight. Every sentence came with a judgment. Rules exist for a reason, she'd say, smiling like it hurt to move her face. Jessica called her the neighborhood warden. I brushed it off. Every HOA's got one, I said. But even then, I saw something in her eyes, the kind of person who didn't want peace, only control. 2 weeks later, she left our first violation notice a printed letter taped to our mailbox. Unapproved porch decoration. Infant stroller visible from street. Jessica cried when she read it. She'd left the stroller on the porch for 5 minutes while bringing Noah inside. "Don't worry," I told her. "I'll handle it." I walked to Margaret's house that night, ready to introduce myself, to keep things civil. Her porch light flicked on before I reached the steps, like she'd been waiting. She opened the door just enough to speak. "Officer Cole," she said. I froze. I hadn't told anyone I was a cop. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I like to know who moves into my neighborhood. We keep things orderly here. That's when the quiet stopped feeling peaceful. That's when I started sleeping with one ear open. It started small, like most wars do. A note here, a phone call there, each one dipped in sugar but laced with venom. 2 days after the stroller notice, I came home from the grocery store to find a bright orange tag stuck to our door. Unauthorized porch furniture. Jessica stood behind me, Noah cradled against her chest. "It's the swing," she whispered. "The one she loved, the one her father built for her when she was a kid." I pulled the tag off, crumpled it, and tossed it. "It's staying." That night, Margaret called. Her voice was smooth, practiced. "Mr. Cole, I noticed you removed your citation without addressing it." I took a slow breath. "Addressing it. It's a porch swing. It violates Regulation 4B. Exterior fixtures visible from the street must be HOA approved." "Then approve it," I said flatly. Silence. Then, "We'll see." She hung up. The next morning, the swing was gone. Someone had unbolted it from the hooks and left it neatly leaning against our mailbox. Jessica stared at it, pale. "Danny." She came onto our porch. I could feel my jaw lock. "Stay inside," I told her. I walked across the street and knocked. Margaret opened the door, still wearing her robe, sipping tea like she'd been waiting for this too. "Morning, officer," she said. "I told you not to come onto my property." I was performing a compliance check. Perfectly within my authority. "Your authority ends at the sidewalk," I said. Her eyes sharpened. "The rules are what keep this neighborhood safe." "Safe?" I scoffed. "You chained up a piece of wood, Margaret." She smiled faintly. "Better wood than a child, The way she said it, the casual cruelty, made my skin crawl. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. But from that day on, it was open season. Every morning brought something new. A fine slipped under our door. A neighbor complaint about the sound of Noah crying. Even our trash bins were inspected. She claimed we were using non-regulation liners. Jessica started flinching at every sound. She'd peek through the blinds before stepping outside, her hand always hovering protectively over Noah's car seat. I filed a complaint with the HOA regional office, but it went nowhere. "Mrs. Langley has been a model board president for 15 years, they said. "We'll review it at the next meeting." When I showed up to that meeting, they didn't even let me speak. Margaret sat at the head of the table like a judge, flanked by 2 board members who nodded at everything she said. "Mr. Cole," she began, "you've already violated multiple ordinances. Perhaps this community isn't the right fit for your lifestyle." My hands curled into fists under the table. "My lifestyle is raising a family in peace." She leaned forward. "Then learn the rules." After that, I knew it wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. A few nights later, around 11 p.m., I caught her standing at the end of our driveway. No flashlight, just standing, watching. The baby monitor buzzed with static. Jessica was asleep upstairs. I stepped outside quietly, the porch light painting her in pale yellow. "Lose something, Margaret?" I called. She didn't flinch. "You left your porch light on after 10 p.m. That's a violation." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "You keeping score?" She smiled. "Just keeping order." I took a step closer. "You like control, don't you?" Her expression didn't change. "Control keeps chaos away." "And what's chaos to you?" "A swing?" A crying baby? Untrained people, she said softly, doing whatever they please. That's when I realized she didn't hate the noise. She hated us. We were the disruption in her perfect painted world. A young couple with a crying infant. A man who didn't bow to her authority. A week later, Jessica found nails scattered across our driveway. Dozens of them, all facing upward. The same day, our mailbox was spray-painted with one word: noise. I filed a police report, but I didn't tell the responding officer who I used to be. He took notes, nodded, said he'd keep an eye out. But I could see it in his face. To him, this was a neighborhood spat, not a crime. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching Margaret's house. Her curtains moved once, maybe a shadow, maybe her. The air felt heavy, the kind that makes dogs bark before a storm. Jessica came downstairs holding Noah. She's not going to stop, is she? I shook my head. No. Then we need to leave. I looked at my son's tiny face, his fingers curled around her shirt. No, I said quietly. We stand our ground. The next morning, Margaret posted a letter on every neighbor's door, a formal notice announcing a new noise mitigation ordinance. Any disturbance audible beyond property lines, including crying infants, could now result in fines or temporary restraint of property use. That phrase, temporary restraint, haunted me. I didn't know then what she meant, but I'd find out. And it would nearly destroy us. The first time I saw the chain, it wasn't around my son. It was around our trash bin. A thick, grimy length of metal snaked through the handles and back to the fence post, padlocked like a bike on a city street. The lock was new. The chain wasn't. The note, zip-tied to it, read, "Temporary restraint per Ordinance 11C." I stared at it for a long time, stomach dropping. Jessica came out in her socks, hugging herself against the morning chill. It's a trash can. Why would someone— I held up a hand. Don't touch it. There are things you learn on the job that never leave you. One is this. When a person wants to control you, they start with your smallest freedoms. The things you won't fight over. The things you'll sigh about and ignore. They test the fence, see if it holds. That afternoon, I cut the chain with a bolt cutter from the hardware store, set the pieces on the porch, and photographed everything. Timestamps, angles, close-ups. Then I filed a police report for vandalism and unlawful restraint of property. It sounds petty. It wasn't. It was a line in the sand. Margaret read the line and smiled. That night I heard her voice from across the street, talking to someone on her phone. Calm. Delighted. "He's escalating," she said, like she was talking about a lab rat. Yes, of course I have documentation. Every single day I stood at the window, fists pressed to the sill, and watched her silhouette glide past her curtains. The porch swing we'd removed from the hooks leaned like a broken limb against our wall. Noah's monitor crackled softly beside it. The house smelled like warm formula and cedar from the toolbox I never unpacked. A normal night. The last kind. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Notice of hearing. Noise mitigation and safety compliance. The HOA board, it said, would hear concerns regarding our disruptive household behaviors and safety deficiencies observed by the president. Safety deficiencies. I read that phrase 3 times. Jessica clutched Noah tighter. Are we unsafe? No. I folded the letter. But Margaret wants the board to say we are. I don't like to talk about fear. Cops don't. But that night, lying next to my wife while our son's soft breath puffed in the dark, I felt a kind of dread that doesn't sound like sirens or shouting. It sounds like paper, like stapled agendas and polite nods in a room where everyone already decided what you are. I made a plan. At dawn, I installed a small camera under our porch eave and a second over the driveway. No sound, just clean, clear video. I logged into the feed on my phone and tested the motion alerts. I set up a third camera, smaller, in the window facing the street. When I finished, my hands smelled like warm plastic and dust. I washed them twice. At the store, I bought a second baby carrier, a decoy, and left it empty on the porch with a blanket tossed inside like we'd just walked in. I told Jessica I was testing something. I told her it was about porch pirates and the recent mail thefts. I lied to the person I love most because the truth would have made her shake. By noon, the decoy had a bright orange tag. By 3, the tag had a friend, a warning card about unattended items. By dusk, the decoy was gone. My motion alert chirped. I checked the feed. Margaret's robe, Margaret's neat hands, Margaret's clipboard. She took the unattended item, set it carefully by the HOA office door at the clubhouse, and photographed the empty porch. Documenting. Always documenting. At 9, I went to the clubhouse, retrieved the decoy, and left a note. Please do not enter our property. At 10, the motion alert chirped again. I watched, jaw clenched, as she returned with a measuring tape. She measured the distance from our porch step to the sidewalk, measured the height of our porch rail, measured the width of the carrier handle. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the glow of the baby monitor, a small moon on my right and the live camera feed a second moon on my left, and I waited for nothing and everything. When I drifted off at dawn, it was to the small sounds only new parents know. The sticky click of a bottle nipple, the soft huff of my wife shushing our son, the rhythmic squeak of the porch swing, hooks even though the swing was gone. Phantom noise. House memory. The hearing was held in the clubhouse's multi-purpose room. Fluorescents, beige carpet, a flag in the corner and a fake ficus tree in a pot with dusty pebbles. The board sat in a line like jurors. Margaret in the middle, of course. To her right, a man with a golf tan and a frown that looked permanent. To her left, a woman who never stopped clicking a pen. Neighbors filled the chairs. Some kept their heads down. Some watched like it was entertainment. I scanned the room for allies. Found none. Margaret opened with a practiced smile. We're here to ensure safety and civility. We'll begin with the matter of the Coles. Her eyes landed on us. We've received repeated reports of disturbances at all hours. We've observed unsecured baby equipment left outside. We've documented non-compliance with safety guidelines. She slid a folder across the table with a manicured finger. Exhibit A through K. I didn't look down. I looked up. Is there a specific allegation? Margaret folded her hands. A pattern. Jessica's hand found mine under the table. Her palm was damp and cold. What would you have done? I asked the room, voice steady. If this was your baby? If he had colic and screamed for 3 hours straight? If the only thing that soothed him was stepping outside for air? A few heads bowed. The pen clicked faster. We understand parenthood can be challenging, Margaret cooed, but we also have a community to keep orderly, I finished for her. We've heard. The man with the golf tan cleared his throat. This isn't personal, Mr. Cole. But I saw what I saw. The exchange of glances, the confidence of a judge who already drafted the ruling. I slid a printed packet across to them, my own exhibits. Dates, times, photos, videos. Here's your temporary restraint on our trash bin. Here are nails on our driveway. Here's my mailbox with noise on it. Here's your president measuring my property line at 10 o'clock at night. The pen stopped clicking. A murmur rolled through the room. Margaret didn't look at the photos. She looked at me. You're recording your neighbors? I'm recording crimes. She tilted her head. And who taught you to define everything as a crime? I met her eyes, held them. 11 years of experience. It was the first time I'd said it in public here. A few heads turned sharply. Someone whispered. The golf tan man looked between us like this added a twist he hadn't rehearsed. Margaret's lips flattened. This is a private association matter. We're not a courtroom. Then stop acting like one, I said, and the room went very still. We didn't win that day. We didn't lose either. They tabled the discussion. They said they'd review additional materials. They said they'd reach out. Bureaucratic anesthesia, the kind that dulls panic while the knife goes in. We walked home in a long, quiet dusk. The sky was a flat steel sheet. The street smelled like rain on hot pavement, that brief, hopeful scent you get right before a storm decides it was just kidding. At our porch, Jessica touched the empty hooks where the swing used to hang and whispered, "I want our life back." I didn't have an answer. I kissed her hair and the soft, warm spot on Noah's head and told her I'd make us safe. I didn't know how. That night, the motion alert chimed at 2:13 a.m. I opened the feed and saw nothing, just static. Then a shape moved, low, quick. A person? A raccoon. The video glitched, stuttered, resumed. The porch light flickered on and off, and then a metallic clink. Another. I went to the door barefoot, lantern backed by the hallway light, and cracked it 2 inches. The air outside tasted like wet iron. The porch was empty, but at the base of the steps, on the concrete, sat a neat coil of chain. I didn't wake Jessica. I closed the door very quietly, locked it, and sat with my back against it until the sun came up. The next 24 hours were a low-grade fever of dread. At breakfast, Jessica tried to laugh, failed, and fed Noah applesauce with hands that trembled. Maybe we should visit my sister this weekend. Maybe, I said. And I changed the subject because I didn't want to leave our house undefended. I called the regional HOA office again. I sent the photos again. I spoke to a man who said, "Mrs. Langley is passionate." Passion is good. I told him passion doesn't measure baby carriers at night. He told me that was outside the scope. I called the police again and asked for extra patrols, then immediately felt ridiculous for asking. I know how many calls they juggle. I know how possible harassment sounds at shift change. At noon, a flyer appeared in our mailbox. Community Safety Seminar, Securing Your Home and Property. Margaret's name was at the bottom. The time, 7 p.m. The place, the clubhouse. I went. Jessica asked me not to. I went anyway. It was worse than a seminar. It was a show. Margaret in a blazer, slides clicking through stock photos of unsecured bikes, open garage doors, and, I nearly laughed, unattended baby gear on porches. Criminals look for signals, she said, pointer tapping the screen. They exploit softness. They exploit disorder. She looked straight at me and didn't blink. They exploit noise. A neighbor asked a question about padlocks. Margaret gave a practiced answer about temporary restraints and the HOA's right to secure potential hazards visible from the street. My jaw tightened. "Define hazard," I said from the back. She didn't turn. Anything attracting opportunists. Like a trash bin? Silence. Like a chain left on someone's steps? I continued. Laughter, nervous and scattered. Margaret raised her chin. If something appears abandoned or unattended, we will act to protect the community. Who decides what appears means? I do, she said simply, and clicked to the next slide. Back home, the porch was clean. No chain. No tags. We ate in the living room with the TV low. Jessica took Noah upstairs early. I locked the doors. I checked the feeds. At 9:40 p.m., a notification popped up on my phone that the camera over the driveway had lost power for 6 seconds. 6 seconds. Not enough to panic the average person, enough to give me a hollow pit under my ribs. At 10:03 p.m., someone knocked. 3 raps. Polite. I looked through the peephole. No one. When I opened the door, a paper slid slightly across the doormat in a gust. Final warning. Unattended items will be secured. I said Jessica's name softly. She didn't answer. Upstairs, Noah whimpered in his sleep and then gave a little sigh. I picked up the paper, folded it twice, and put it in a drawer with the others. I slept for an hour, maybe 2. The day it happened began ordinary. A blue morning, grass wet, sparkling, the world freshly washed. Jessica had a postpartum follow-up at noon. She wanted to go alone, to feel normal, to feel like a person whose entire schedule wasn't built around tiny intervals between feedings and naps. "Take your time," I said. "We'll be here." I kissed her at the door, watched the car back down the driveway, watched her wave through the window like we'd done 100 times before we met Margaret. I loved her more in that wave than in our wedding vows. Something about how normal it was. I fed Noah. He spit most of it on my shirt. We laughed. It felt good to laugh in a house that had forgotten how. He dozed off on my shoulder, small and heavy as a bag of sugar. His breath warmed my neck. I walked the hallway like a ghost with a private blessing in my arms. When he was deep asleep, I lowered him into the carrier. He twitched, grabbed my finger, released it. I kissed his forehead and stood there a moment, just watching him be new. The doorbell rang. The carrier's handle was still warm under my palm when I set it down just inside the door and opened it. No one. Another flyer. Another safety seminar in a week. I shut the door. I texted Jessica a photo of Noah snoring. A heart. "We're good." When I turned back, Noah's eyelids fluttered and he fussed. That fragile animal sound that's half breath, half cry. I swayed the carrier gently. He calmed. I thought, fresh air. 2 minutes. The porch always soothed him. I grabbed the blanket, wrapped it over the carrier, and stepped outside. The air was cool and sweet. The street was empty. The sun slid between 2 puffy clouds like a kid peeking through curtains. I set the carrier on the porch, right beside my chair, and leaned into the house to grab a second blanket. The door was never more than half open. I was never more than 1 step away. 1 step. That's when my phone buzzed, a call from the doctor's office number. Reflex is a cruel thing. I tapped to answer. "Hello?" Static. Then a voice, not the nurse. "You should secure that child." I turned. Margaret was on the sidewalk, hands folded, face blank. My hand tightened on the phone. "He is secure." "Back away from my house." "I'm noting a violation," she said. "Note it from the street," I snapped. She smiled. "Of course." I looked down at Noah. He was fine. Eyes closed. The blanket tented gently in his breath. The porch step creaked behind me, neighbor walking past. I didn't look. I held the door with my foot and reached for the other blanket. 2 seconds. 3. The chain came from nowhere. A flash of dull silver, a clatter, a pause. I whipped around. Margaret was still on the sidewalk. But there was another person. I only saw an elbow, a forearm, the quick, decisive motion of someone who'd practiced this, sliding a chain through the handle of the carrier and around the porch rail. The padlock clicked. The sound was bright, obscene. "Hey!" I lunged, grabbing the chain. It bit my palm, oily and cold. The person bolted, a neighbor I recognized only by their shoes. "Call 911, I shouted. My voice sounded like it had been thrown down a well. Noah woke and screamed, not loud, not like a siren, but like a kitten trapped under a bowl. The chain tightened as the carrier shifted against the rail. "No, no, no," I whispered, hands fumbling the links, trying to slide the loop back out. The padlock sat fat and dumb where the links met. A tag hung from it. Secured. HOA. Unattended item. I looked up. Margaret watched, serene. "We can't have hazards," she said softly. Something inside me tore. It made a sound I hope I never make again. I pulled. The chain bit harder. The carrier tipped. Noah's cry sharpened and a thin line of drool slid across his chin, trembling. I forced my breathing slow, in through the nose, out through the mouth. "It's okay, buddy. I got you." I braced a knee against the rail to keep the carrier from shifting and reached for the bolt cutters I kept by the door since the trash bin chain. They weren't there. "Looking for these?" Margaret's voice. She held up my bolt cutters like a prize at a game. "You left them visible. That's not safe." My vision narrowed. "Give them to me," I said. "Address the violation," she replied. "Give. Them." To me, she tilted her head. "Say please." The world slowed. I heard a lawnmower start 3 houses down. A dog barked. The air tasted like chlorine from a distant pool. On the baby monitor, still in my pocket, I could hear the same scream I was hearing in front of me, tinny and small. A horrible echo. I thought I could break the rail. I thought I could lift the carrier handle and slide the chain. I thought I could kill her. I didn't. I dropped my shoulder, gripped the chain on either side of the lock, and twisted hard, the way you twist a head to crack a neck in old movies. The links squealed. Something shifted, not enough. "Danny!" Jessica's voice from the driveway. She must have pulled in and seen the scene before I saw her. She ran, hair loose, face white, eyes huge. "What are you—" She saw the chain. She saw our son. Her knees buckled. "Call 911, I yelled again. She fumbled her phone, dropped it, picked it up, pressed the screen with useless, panicked fingers. "Ma'am," Margaret said to her mildly, "please remain calm." I reached for the lock again. My hands were slick. Blood from a torn knuckle smeared the metal. My uniform, the old one I'd kept for moving boxes for grim tasks, hung in the hall closet. I thought of it, useless fabric, authority folded into a question. A neighbor, Mr. Howell, shuffled closer. He is 70, if he's a day, a veteran, a man who waters his lawn like prayer. He stared. He whispered, "My God." "Help me," I said without looking at him. He did. He leaned his weight into the rail while I angled the handle, and for one dizzy second, the chain slacked. I wasted it. I breathed. "Again," I said. We did it again. The chain slacked a hair more. The lock, still fat and cold at the belly of the problem. Sirens far away. Closer, too slow. "Please," Jessica whispered to Margaret, voice shredded, palms up. "Please." Margaret's expression didn't change. "This wouldn't have happened if you followed the rules." I stopped moving. Everything inside me went dead quiet. I stood up, walked to her, took the bolt cutters from her hands. It was easy. She didn't expect the lack of fury. I turned away, set the lower jaw of the blades around the lock's shackle, squeezed. The first squeeze dented, the second shifted. The third, with Mr. Howell's hand bracing the carrier with Jessica's breath hitching, with my son screaming, snapped. The padlock clanged. The chain loosened, slithered, fell. I swept it aside with my foot, lifted my son in one motion and pressed him against my chest so hard he squeaked. He was fine. He was fine. He was fine. I can say that now. In the moment, I was drowning. The patrol car pulled up. The officer stepped out, hand on his radio, eyes scanning the scene. He took in the chain, the lock, the tag, the neighbors frozen like a Greek chorus. My bleeding hands, Jessica shaking like she was standing in a blizzard. "What happened here?" he asked. No one spoke. I raised the tag with 2 fingers. Unlawful restraint. Child endangerment. Trespass. The officer looked at the tag, looked at Margaret, looked at me again. "Who placed the lock?" "I did," Margaret said calmly. "In my capacity as HOA president, after noting an unattended—" "Stop," I said. The officer held up a hand. "Sir." I took a breath. "I'm former law enforcement, badge number 7289, Richmond PD, 11 years. I have cameras. You will see who did this. But she sanctioned it." The officer's face changed. The hint of dismissal vanished. He stepped to the side, voice clipped. "Everybody stay where you are. When I replayed the footage an hour later on my laptop, flanked by 2 officers and a neighbor who kept saying, "I can't believe it," I felt the same dread I'd felt reading that first letter, multiplied by 1,000. The video showed exactly what I'd feared. A neighbor, the one with the white sneakers I'd recognized in a flash, stepping onto our porch, threading the chain, clicking the lock, and jogging away. 2 minutes earlier, the camera caught Margaret on the sidewalk, speaking to that neighbor, handing them something small and heavy. A padlock. The officer paused the video and leaned back. "We're taking statements." He turned to Margaret. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." Her mouth opened in a surprised "oh," as if this scene had deviated from the script. "This is an association enforcement matter. It's a criminal matter," he said. "Let's go." They read her rights on the sidewalk. Neighbors watched from behind blinds, behind hedges, from porches like ours. The flag at the corner house hung limp in air that felt like it was holding its breath. Margaret didn't resist. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She looked at me over the officer's shoulder with a small, almost pitying smile that made my skin crawl. "You did this," she said. "Ma'am," the officer warned. She went quiet. She got in the car. The door shut.